When Julian tapped his glass, the room fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. Mine locked on his face, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. He smiled, the same smile that used to make me feel safe. "Tonight's special," he said, "because I have something for Savannah." I swallowed hard. My fingers clenched the stem of my drink lemonade disguised in a champagne flute. My throat tightened. God, was he about to propose here, now, in front of everyone? There was a hush, a crinkle of wrapping paper, a pause in breath. Julian stepped forward and handed me a small, silver-wrapped box tied with a deep blue ribbon. I smiled, but not because I was happy. It was the kind of smile you give when your brain doesn't know what else to do. I opened the box, and the world went completely still. No ring. Just a folded slip of paper creased perfectly in thirds. My hands trembled as I opened it. Then I read the words, and they sliced through me like ice, sharp as steel. "I'm leaving you. You're useless. I deserve better. Your things will be packed by Monday." A second of silence. And then the music kept playing, soft, indifferent. But inside me everything had gone silent. I looked up and Julian wasn't smiling anymore. His face had gone stone cold. His lips curled just slightly. Then he said flat uncaring, not even blinking, "We're done, Savannah. You were fun for a while. But I don't feel like wasting more time." A dry laugh echoed from somewhere in the crowd. Someone actually thought it was a joke. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my eyes wide. My fingers clenched around the letter, like it was the only thing keeping me from floating away. And Julian, he turned around, walked out, left me there in a room full of stunned faces, with a heartbeat quietly growing inside me. A hush fell. Then Naomi's voice, soft, sharp, breaking. "Jesus, what a fucking bastard." And then the sound of something breaking, not glass, but something deeper, something inside me. "My name is Savannah Lane. I'm 29 years old. I live in a glass-walled penthouse just outside Seattle. I thought this year would be the start of everything, a baby, a family, a new chapter. But that night, that moment, it didn't destroy me. It rewrote the story of who I would become. And that was the moment everything cracked open. Voices overlapped, gasps, whispers, questions fired from every corner of the room. "Savannah, are you okay? Is this real? Did he really just walk out? What the hell was that?" Someone reached for my shoulder. I stepped back instinctively. A champagne flute shattered near the front door, and everyone jumped. The sound rang louder than it should have, but I still didn't speak. I just looked down, at my stomach, still flat beneath the satin of my dress, almost invisible. But I could feel it, the weight, the presence, the quiet pulse of the one part of Julian I hadn't let go of yet. Delaney stepped into my line of vision, both hands gripping my arms like they were stakes in the ground. "Do you want me to kick everyone out?" I blinked, finally looked her in the eyes. "No," I whispered. "Let them stay. Let them watch what it looks like when a man abandons his pregnant girlfriend in front of a rooftop full of witnesses." Her jaw clenched, but she nodded. We didn't say much after that. She disappeared for a bit, then returned with a comforter and a floor mattress from the guest room, laying them out in the corner, like a makeshift sanctuary. "I'm not going home tonight," she said. Quiet, solid, as the crowd slowly dissolved some muttering awkward apologies, others too embarrassed to say a word. Delaney moved through the space like a quiet storm. She wiped the counters, tossed half-eaten cupcakes into the trash, left the silver box exactly where it was on the dining table, as if touching it might set off a bomb. I sat across from it, Alone, well past midnight. No phone, no scrolling, no texts. Just silence. I stared at the box, not because I wanted to open it again, but because I needed to burn the image of it into my memory. That was the shape of the moment my old life ended. At 3:14 a.m., the refrigerator light blinked on when I opened it, then blinked off again when I shut the door without taking anything. No appetite. My fingers were ice, my legs numb, but my mind razor sharp, still focused. For the first time in hours, I could think, because there was one thing Julian didn't know. 2 weeks ago, I had gone into his desk looking for a postage stamp, and I found something else. That night, while the city slept and the rain pinned itself to the windows like secrets trying to stay hidden, I opened my laptop. Screenshots, receipts, messages. Julian thought he ended the story that night, but what he really did was strike a match, and I was about to burn every one of his lies down, one by one. 2 weeks before my birthday, I'd been sitting at Julian's desk trying to mail thank you notes to my OBGYN and a few early baby gift senders. I reached into the second drawer, the one he never really used, and that's when I saw it, an unsealed envelope, tucked under a folder labeled Q3 Projections. Inside, a Capital One credit card statement, not the one we shared, one I didn't even know existed. I remember my body going still, like some part of me already knew what I was about to find. The first transaction. 4 Seasons. Resort, Maui. Dinner for 2, 800 misbato to 75. One night suite, 1320s. I blinked, checked the date. It was the same weekend I'd been in Portland for work. It didn't stop there. Next page, a boutique flower shop in Bellevue, a jewelry store, 3 Uber rides starting from our address and ending at a luxury condo near Lake Washington. I didn't cry. I just sat there, quiet, still, watching the numbers pile up like snow. The last page had something that stopped me cold. See, gray heart emoji. A message sent from his Apple Watch. I only saw it for half a second when he left the watch charging in the bathroom. Are you sure she doesn't know? I pretended I didn't see it at the time. I pretended a lot of things. But now I knew exactly what I was looking at. And that girl, the one who stood in my penthouse on my birthday, wearing the purple silk dress I gave her last year. Her name was Aria Monroe. She was supposed to be my best friend. And that text from C on Julian's watch, that wasn't just anyone. That was her. That night, sitting alone with the glow of my laptop reflecting off the windows, I created a new Gmail account, one he'd never think to check. I started uploading everything: screenshots, credit card statements, Uber receipts, text messages, date-stamped images, evidence, digital fingerprints, the shadow of a double life. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with it all. I just knew I had to keep it safe somewhere out of reach, because when the time came, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw things. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to show him, not with anger, with facts, with silence, with control. And then I found the photo, a Facebook post, 2 weeks old. Aria at a bar in Capitol Hill, glass of wine in hand, smiling at someone just off camera. In the mirror behind her, barely visible, was a man in a gray Kenneth Cole coat, the same coat Julian wore on our Palm Springs trip last fall. No tags, no captions, but it was there, a reflection, a ghost in the background, and enough to confirm everything I already knew. You think betrayal is loud, screaming, fighting, slamming doors. But sometimes it's as quiet as a message left open, as subtle as a forgotten receipt, and just as sharp as the edge of a silver box. I turned off the laptop, pulled out a notebook. Across the first page I wrote in black ink Phase 1 collect. and then I sat back, my hand resting on the smallest swell of my stomach. Julian thought I was weak because I didn't scream, but he hadn't seen what I could do when I didn't make a sound. The first thing I changed wasn't my number. It was the lock on the front door. At 8:01 the next morning, a locksmith arrived. He was middle-aged, wore a calm expression, and didn't ask a single personal question. Just looked at the old deadbolt and said, "You want a keypad or fingerprint?" "Fingerprint," I replied. 10 minutes later, Julian's key no longer worked on the door he once called home. The balcony sliding doors were next. Then the windows. Then I installed a motion sensor, one of those small, barely noticeable ones you can order online. By 8:45 the apartment was still quiet, the lights still warm, but something had shifted. I had made my first decision just for me. You don't realize how much of your life is entangled with someone until you start cutting the ties. At 9:30 a.m., I poured myself a cup of tea, opened my laptop, and booked a legal consultation. Delaney had referred me to someone through a friend, a woman named Miranda Chen. Former corporate lawyer, now focused on asset separation and legal protection for women in non-traditional dissolutions. Translation: when you're not married, but still have everything to untangle. We met over Zoom an hour later. Miranda was sharp, high-bun, slate-gray glasses, blazer, cleanly pressed. No small talk. "You weren't legally married." She began scrolling through the intake form I'd filled out. "But if both names are on the mortgage, and there's joint financial use, the courts treat it as shared investment. Do you want to pursue asset separation formally?" I paused, not because I wasn't sure, but because that was the first time anyone besides Delaney had acknowledged the truth behind it all. I wasn't just a girlfriend anymore. I was a mother-to-be, and I had to protect something bigger than myself.
"Yes," I said. "Let's move forward."
By the end of that hour, I had a checklist. Close all joint accounts. Open solo banking and credit. Notify the mortgage lender of separation of intent. Record all medical expenses related to the pregnancy. Track financial contributions to the property from both parties. Document emotional and logistical support, or lack thereof, from the father. I printed the list and pinned it to the fridge with an owl-shaped magnet Julian once called tacky. Now it felt like a badge of defiance. That afternoon my phone buzzed. "Julian." Just one line. "I'll swing by Friday to pick up my things. Don't be home." I stared at it for a second, then typed back, "No." 3 minutes later he called. I let it ring. Then came another text. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I just want my things." I replied, "You'll get them with witnesses. I'm not being alone with you again." By 7:00 p.m. that night, I was on the phone with Delaney. "I've got you," she said before I even finished explaining. "I'll bring backup." She called Marcus, her longtime friend from her Gym X military, built like a tree trunk, with a full sleeve of tattoos, and the word integrity inked down his bicep. She also looped in my cousin Sierra, a second-year law student who treats situations like these, like mock trial training. And just like that, team exit plan was in place. The next 2 days were quiet. I packed Julian's things neatly, labeled every box, printed an itemized list. I didn't touch the silver box. I didn't delete the screenshots. And I didn't speak his name out loud. Instead, I made a rule. Every time I felt myself slipping into grief, I would take one step toward freedom. And by Thursday night, I was standing taller, still tired, still pregnant, still hurt, but finally no longer afraid. He texted Friday around 3, like it was a lunch meeting, like nothing had happened. I didn't respond, but at 2:45 p.m. I was ready. The apartment was spotless. His boxes stacked neatly in the hallway, each labeled and itemized. Sierra had a clipboard. Marcus stood by the door, arms crossed over his chest like a bouncer at a private club. I was in a gray, oversized sweater hair, in a clean high bun, no makeup legs crossed on the couch with my laptop open, like it was any other Friday afternoon. Except it wasn't. Delaney sat across from me, calm but sharp-eyed, one leg tucked under her phone in hand just in case. We weren't waiting for him. We were watching him exit for the last time. At exactly 3:01, the Audi pulled into the lot. He took his time coming up. When the knock came, I didn't even move. Delaney opened the door. Julian's face changed the second he saw who was standing there. Marcus, 6'3", arms too big for his shirt, military straight posture. Sierra clipboard in hand, legal smile. Delaney, cool, unshaken, like a shield between worlds. Julian blinked. "What the hell is this?" Marcus smiled. Calm. "Just here to make sure everything goes smoothly." Sierra stepped forward. "Here's a list of your belongings. Each item has been cataloged. If anything is missing, please submit a claim in writing. You'll find the proper form attached." She handed him a stapled packet. Julian looked at me standing now in the living room, still silent. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice, didn't ask him why. "This apartment," I said evenly, "is no longer your stage." He opened his mouth like he had something to say, but Delaney gave him one look, icy, protective, final. He shut it. He moved like someone who just realized the game was over, grabbed the 3 boxes marked with his name, rolled the small suitcase I'd packed for him. Didn't argue. Didn't ask about the missing cologne. Didn't even look around like he used to, like it was still his. But just as his hand touched the doorknob, I spoke again. "You should be grateful I left a few things behind," I said softly. "The ones that mattered I already kept for myself." He hesitated, turned slightly, but I was already walking away. The door shut, and for the first time in weeks the apartment felt light. No tension in the air, no waiting for the next surprise, no second-guessing, just me, and the child growing quietly inside me. That night, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, and the apartment filled with the kind of golden stillness only freedom brings, I sat at the table and poured myself a glass of sparkling water. Delaney stayed late. Marcus took the boxes out to Julian's car and returned without a word. Sierra left her clipboard behind. I think on purpose. I didn't cry that day. I didn't feel victory either. What I felt was peace. That strange kind of peace that comes when you've faced something that once terrified you and watched it walk out the door without taking a piece of you with it. But I also knew this wasn't the end of Julian. He wasn't done. Not yet. He'd show up again. Not because he missed me, but because there was one truth he hadn't heard yet, and when he finally came knocking that night, he wasn't ready for what I was about to tell him. It started with footsteps, heavy, uneven, echoing down the hallway outside my apartment. Then came the knock, slow at first, then harder, then relentless. I was standing barefoot in the kitchen, one hand gripping the edge of the marble counter, the other resting on my lower stomach. I hadn't turned the lights off yet. The apartment glowed in warm gold and soft shadows. The world was asleep, but my heart, it was wide awake. "Savannah," his voice cracked through the door like a glass shattering on tile. Drunk, slurred, somewhere between begging and fury. "Savannah, I know you're in there. Please, please open the door." I didn't move, just stood there, still, frozen. One foot curled over the other like it could ground me. "We need to talk." He was slurring now, muffled, like the weight of the liquor had sunk into his chest. "Please, just for a minute. We have to talk about the baby." That word, baby. He had never said it out loud before. Not once. Not even when I'd handed him the ultrasound, not even when he stared at the sonogram picture in that cafe. But now, here he was, calling her the baby, calling her real. "I need to know the truth," he pleaded. Tell me if it's mine." And that's when something inside me cracked. Not the kind of crack that shatters, the kind that releases, the kind that lets the air rush in after you've been holding your breath for too long. Behind the door, Julian kept talking, or maybe crying. I couldn't tell anymore. I could hear the thud of his fist against the wood, his weight leaning into it, the sound of a man unraveling thread by thread. But I didn't open it, because this time I wasn't the one left out in the cold. He left me on my birthday. He laughed while doing it. And now, suddenly, he wanted into a life he tried to erase, into a child he never asked about. I pressed my palm against the wall beside the door. I could feel the vibration of his voice. But I also felt something stronger, the flutter of a tiny movement inside me, a gentle kick, like she was telling me, we're okay. You and me. We're still here. A few minutes passed. The banging slowed, then stopped. The hallway fell into silence, broken only by the slow shuffle of his feet retreating. Then, my phone buzzed. One message. I'm sorry. If you'll allow it, meet me tomorrow morning. Black Pine Cafe. 9 a.m. You choose the seat. I stared at the screen. No reply. I walked into the nursery, the unfinished one. The crib still unassembled. The boxes half opened. The blanket Naomi gave me folded neatly in a chair, and I whispered, without even realizing it, "You deserve better than this." I didn't sleep much that night, but for the first time since it all began, I knew exactly who I was when morning came, and when I opened my phone again at sunrise, I typed just one word, okay. I got there early, 20 minutes early to be exact. The Black Pine Cafe was quiet at that hour, just the soft hum of the espresso machine, the click of mugs on marble, and a few quiet conversations tucked into corners. I picked a window seat, not because it had the best light, but because it let me see him coming, and when he did, I didn't flinch. Julian walked in at exactly 9:01. No sunglasses. No hangover, at least not one he let show. Hair slightly disheveled, jacket wrinkled, and in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in weeks. Uncertainty. He spotted me and paused, then walked over like a man on trial. "You came," he said. I said I would. He sat down, didn't touch the menu, didn't order coffee, just looked at me like he was trying to read between the lines of who I used to be and who I had become. "Is it mine?" he asked, voice low. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." He blinked, swallowed hard. "And you're sure?" I raised an eyebrow. Calm sharp. "If you're asking for a DNA test, I've already made an appointment. You can show up or not, it won't change anything." He leaned back, ran a hand over his jaw. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you weren't someone I could trust with the truth." I pulled out a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. Inside, appointment schedules, medical receipts, the due date, a copy of my birth plan, a one-page letter titled Co-Parenting Agreement. Preliminary terms. He opened it slowly, didn't say anything for a while, just scanned it. His eyes moved line by line until they stopped at the bold print near the bottom. "You may be involved in this child's life if and only if you contribute consistently, respectfully, and without causing harm or instability to the mother." He looked up. "You really put this together?" "Yes. With a lawyer and a therapist, and a woman who once stood exactly where I'm sitting right now." He exhaled, loud, shaky. "I didn't mean for things to happen this way." I held up a hand. "Stop. Don't do that. Don't reach for sympathy when you haven't taken responsibility." He opened his mouth to argue, closed it, looked out the window like it might offer him an escape. But the world outside didn't care about his regret, and neither did I. "So what do you want from me?" he asked finally. "Nothing." He blinked. "Nothing. You don't owe me love, Julian. You don't even owe me closure. But you do owe her structure, safety, support. If you can't give that, then walk away now. And don't come back just because you're lonely." He stared at the table, said nothing for a long time. Then finally, "I want to try, if you'll let me." I nodded, not because I trusted him, but because I trusted myself. Trying doesn't mean you get to step in and out whenever it's convenient. I know. Good. Then we'll start with supervised visits. 1 hour a week. No overnights. No emotional outbursts. You'll meet the mediator next Friday. He looked up at me like he didn't recognize the woman across from him. And maybe he didn't. Because this wasn't the girl he left at the party. This was a mother. I left the cafe without looking back. Outside, the wind had picked up. But the air felt cleaner somehow. I placed a hand on my stomach and whispered, "We're almost there, little one. I've got us now." I didn't plan to see her. I didn't even recognize her at first. The light caught her hair a little differently that day. Or maybe I was just seeing her with new eyes. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had gone to Mother House Boutique to pick up a few things for the nursery: soft muslin swaddles, a hand-knit bonnet, a journal for the baby's first year. I was standing near the window display, thumbing through a shelf of storybooks, when I heard that voice. Bright, breezy, just a little too sweet. "Does this come in lilac? My friend's baby shower is this weekend." And there she was, Aria Monroe. Wearing lavender again, of course she was. A cashmere wrap this time. Loose curls. Lip gloss too shiny for a weekday. She hadn't seen me yet. She was busy charming the clerk, flashing that familiar smile, the one she wore at my birthday party, when she toasted to new beginnings. I should have walked away. I should have turned and left. But I didn't. I waited until she turned shopping bag in hand, stepping toward the door, and froze. Our eyes met, and for a second, just 1 second, her face dropped. Not much, just a flicker, but I saw it. Recognition, guilt, fear, all in a half-second smile. "Savannah." She started, voice tilting upward like we were about to make brunch plans. "Wow, you look—" "Don't," I said. The word was soft, calm, but she stopped talking immediately. I stepped closer. Not aggressive, not loud, just enough to make sure she couldn't slip past. "You're not going to apologize," I said. "You're not sorry, and I don't need it." She opened her mouth. I kept going. "You slept with the man I lived with while I was carrying his child. Then you stood in my home in a dress I picked out for you and cheered when he humiliated me." She looked down, shifted her weight. "I didn't know about the baby then, but you knew about me." Silence. "You chose the betrayal. You chose the lie. And now, you don't get to choose the rewrite." She was quiet, uncomfortably so, and for a brief second, I could tell she wanted to cry. Maybe because she knew she couldn't play victim in this version of the story. I leaned in just slightly, not to threaten, to end it. "I'm not mad anymore, Aria. I'm just done. With him, with you, with all of it. This isn't about revenge. It's about peace. And peace means letting you go without ever needing to forgive you." Her eyes welled, but I didn't stay to watch the show. I walked past her out into the bright afternoon light, carried my bag of baby things like it was armor, breathed in air that didn't taste like poison anymore, and somewhere deep inside me, I felt the last piece of her fall off my heart like dust. That night, I wrote something in the baby journal. "Today I let go of someone I once called family. She won't be in your life, but I promise, the people who stay will be the ones who never made me question my worth." The first one came in a plain white envelope. No name, no return address, just my apartment number written in steady block letters. Inside was a receipt, $4,000 transferred to Dr. Hensley's clinic, my OB-GYN. The note at the bottom read only, "For your next ultrasound." And the ones after, no from Julian, no signature. Just that. I stood in my kitchen holding the slip of paper like it might vanish if I breathed wrong. A week later, a box appeared, handwritten label. Same style, no name. Inside a hardcover book. The Conscious Father. A folded onesie, pale yellow, with tiny printed stars. And a card. Not a hallmark. Just a blank note card. With a single line. I'm trying, I'm learning, I'm here. Still no signature. Still, I knew. I didn't call him. I didn't text back. But I also didn't throw anything away. Each letter, each offering, I tucked into a small wooden box that sat on my dresser next to a framed print of the first ultrasound. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. It was space, a space for things I didn't have words for yet. 2 more weeks passed. Then came the third, a small envelope. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside, a photo. Me, on the rooftop patio back, when we were still pretending to be happy. Hair up, laughing. Sunlight catching on my cheek. Not staged, not posed. Just me captured in a quiet moment of joy. On the back in pencil, you looked peaceful. I want that for you again. Even if I'm not in the picture, that was the first time I cried. Not the loud, shaking kind. Just a tear that ran silently across my cheek, while I stood in the middle of my apartment barefoot, one hand on my belly, the other gripping a photograph of a girl I barely recognized anymore. And in that moment, something softened, not toward him, but toward myself, toward the part of me that still believed love could look like stability, like effort, like showing up without expecting applause. Later that night, Delaney came over with takeout and sat across from me at the kitchen island. You gonna let him back in? I shook my head. Not yet. But you're not shutting the door either, are you? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. I pulled the wooden box closer and flipped through the notes again. 1, 2, 3, then pulled out a 4th blank. Wrote my own message, folded it, slipped it into an envelope, addressed it. No name. Just 4 words on the front, for when you're ready. It was raining that morning. Not the loud kind, just a soft, steady drizzle that made the whole world feel wrapped in cotton. I woke up with a cramp, subtle at first, like a pulled muscle or something I could stretch through. But 10 minutes later, it came again, stronger. I sat on the edge of the bed, hand on my belly, eyes closed, breathing through it. Not today, I whispered. You're early, little one. But she had other plans. By 9 a.m., I was timing contractions. By 10, Delaney was rushing through my front door, sneakers-soaked hoodie, half-zipped phone, already dialing my OB, hospital bag. By the door, you okay? No, I said honestly, gripping the back of a chair as another wave hit. But I smiled through it, because I knew this was it. We got to the hospital around 11:20 a.m. The triage nurse took one look at me and said, "You're not going anywhere today, Mama." They wheeled me into a room with warm lights and muted beeps, a soft green blanket on the recliner. A window cracked open just enough to hear the rain, and when the pain hit full force, deep, ancient, unrelenting, Delaney never left my side. She held my hand, rubbed my back, spoke calmly when my breath caught, wiped my forehead when I thought I couldn't do it anymore. She whispered, "You've already done harder things than this. You've survived worse. This is the beginning." Time bent. I remember nurses moving around me like water, a doctor's voice saying she's ready. I remember gripping the side rails, gritting my teeth, just one more push. And then everything changed. The cry was small at first, like a question, a note of surprise at entering the world. And then it grew stronger, clearer, a full-bodied sound that filled the room with something bigger than breath. The nurse laid her on my chest, warm, wet, real, tiny fingers grasping, heartbeat fast, eyes blinking unsure. I looked down at her and whispered, "Hi, I'm your mom." And I wept, not because I was sad, not because I was broken, but because in that one moment nothing else mattered. Not Julian, not betrayal, not the things I lost, just her. We named her Isla Wren, soft like the bird, strong like the woman who carried her. 6 pounds, 10 ounces, a head full of dark hair, and a pair of eyes that looked exactly like mine. Later that night, the nurse brought in a flower delivery. No name, just a note. "You made it. She's perfect. And so are you." I didn't have to guess, but I didn't respond either, because right now, all my love belonged to her. I held her against my chest as the sky outside turned deep blue, and whispered the words I needed to hear. When I was left alone, "You are wanted. You are safe. You are loved beyond measure." And with that, we both closed our eyes for the very first time as mother and daughter. The nurse knocked softly, like she already knew the question she was bringing would land with weight. "Hey, Mama," she said gently. "It's time for the paperwork." I nodded. Isla was sleeping against my chest, her breathing slow and warm like a tide going out. The nurse handed me a clipboard, a stack of forms. "Routine," she said. "Feeding preferences, insurance, pediatrician selection, and then the last page, birth certificate information." I stared at the blank line. "Father's name, optional." Sides. The pen in my hand suddenly felt heavier than my daughter. How do you write down the name of someone who disappeared when you needed him most? How do you explain to a child one day why the line next to her mother's name is full, and the one next to father is empty? Or worse, how do you explain that you included someone who didn't show up when it counted? I looked over at Isla. She shifted slightly, made that tiny sigh she does when she's dreaming. I thought about the night she arrived, how it was Delaney who held my hand, Marcus who called ahead to prep the room, Sierra who brought snacks and stayed until midnight just to make sure I had clean clothes and enough water. And Julian, he wasn't there. He was never asked not to come, but he also never tried. I thought about the photo he sent, the money, the books, the quiet gifts left without expectation. Part of me knew he was trying, but trying after the moment, trying without presence. That's not fatherhood. That's apology. I picked up the pen, held it over the blank line, and I waited for some surge of clarity, some whisper from the universe, some emotional compass. But what I heard was Isla's heartbeat, steady, pure, unattached to anyone else's failure. I put the pen down, and I left the space blank, not out of bitterness, not out of anger, but out of truth. Because you don't get to be a father just because you provided DNA. You earn that space, and right now he hadn't. When the nurse came back, she saw the empty line. She didn't say anything, just nodded, took the clipboard, and whispered, "Good call, Mama." That night, I tucked Isla into the bassinet beside my bed and pulled out the baby journal. On the next page, I wrote, "Your name is yours. Your story starts with me, and whoever joins it later will have to earn the right to be in it." He didn't text this time, didn't call, didn't ask for permission. He just showed up. It was late afternoon, the kind of overcast Seattle sky that makes everything look like a memory. I had just finished burping Isla and was about to rock her to sleep when there was a soft knock at the door. 3 quick taps, hesitant, no urgency. I knew before I even looked through the peephole. Julian. I opened the door halfway, not because I was scared, but because I needed the threshold to stay in place for both of us. He stood there holding a small brown paper bag, wearing a sweater I didn't recognize, looking older than the last time I saw him, more tired, more real. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi," I echoed, holding Isla close to my chest. Her cheek was warm against my collarbone. Her tiny fingers curled around the strap of my tank top. He looked at her like he was afraid to blink. Is she okay? She's perfect. For a moment he said nothing. Then with both hands he held out the paper bag. I brought some things. For her. For you. I took it, nodded, and set it on the table without opening it. He watched every motion like it might break him. She has your eyes. She has her own eyes, I said. Yeah, he whispered, blinking down. Yeah, she does. I opened the door the rest of the way, not because I was ready, but because I needed to see if he was. He stepped inside slow, looked around the room like it was foreign land, saw the photos on the bookshelf, the folded laundry on the armchair, the bassinet tucked next to my bed. You've made it home, he said almost to himself. I sat down in the rocker. Isla stirred slightly, but didn't wake. You weren't there, I said softly. I know. You had chances. I know. You sent letters, money, gifts, but you missed the story. He nodded, and his eyes filled slow, reluctant tears from someone who'd spent months pretending he had more time than he did. Can I hold her? I paused, and for a long, tense breath I almost said no. But then I looked down at Isla, and I realized this moment wasn't about him. It was about what kind of story she'd grow up hearing. So I stood, and slowly, carefully I placed her in his arms. His whole body shifted under her weight. Not much, just enough. His breath caught, hands trembling. She blinked once, then yawned that slow, newborn stretch, like she was opening to the world for the first time. Hi, baby girl, he whispered. His voice cracked on the word girl. She curled slightly into his chest. Her head fit in the curve of his neck like it was always meant to be there, and he broke, right there in my living room. Not with noise, not with drama, but with quiet tears that hit the top of her blanket, like rain on glass. I don't deserve her, he said. I know, I said, but I want to try. Then you'll have to start small, I whispered, because she only knows safe. And I won't let her learn fear. He nodded, still rocking, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't look like Julian Ward. He looked like a man trying to become a father. He didn't stay long. 15 minutes, maybe less. When he left, he didn't ask for anything, just handed her back gently, tucked the blanket near her chin, and whispered thank you. To me, to her, to the universe. I'll never know. That night, as I held Isla to my chest, I wrote, "Today I let him in." Not because I trust him, but because she deserves the chance to be seen by everyone who helped make her, even the ones who left, even the ones who came back. Somewhere between the midnight feedings and the 4 a.m. lullabies, I found my pen again, not just to sign forms, not to jot down appointments, but to write, really write. It started small. A single page ripped from a notebook tucked into the corner of Isla's memory box. Today you laughed in your sleep. A soft hiccup of joy. I didn't know babies could do that so young. But you did. And I did too. After that, the pages started to pile up. Thoughts, memories, moments I didn't want to lose. Things I couldn't say out loud, not yet, but needed to let breathe on paper. I turned a corner of my bedroom into a writing nook. Just a chair, a second-hand desk, a salt lamp, and a baby monitor blinking quietly in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A place where I could exist outside the role of mother, not separate from it, just beside it. Sometimes I wrote about Isla, her tiny fists, her impossible yawn, the smell of her hair after a bath. Sometimes I wrote about him, not hate, not blame, just truth. How betrayal sits in the body. How healing doesn't arrive like lightning, it seeps in like light through a curtain. Other times I wrote about me, the version of me that once gave too much. That trusted too fast. That stayed too long at tables where love wasn't being served. and how that version of me didn't vanish. She evolved, stretched, scarred, grew. I started a blog. Quietly. Anonymous. Notes from the nursery floor. Nothing fancy, just one post a week. Short entries, no names. But the comments came anyway. Other women. Other stories. Other mothers holding babies and broken hearts at the same time. I thought I was the only one. You put it into words. Thank you. I read this while nursing at 3 a.m. and cried with you. And for the first time since that night, since the silver box, the folded note, the public unraveling, I felt seen, not just as someone who was hurt, but as someone who turned pain into something useful. Beautiful, even. Julian came by once a week now, always on time, always respectful. He never stayed long, never crossed lines. He was showing up, and I was watching not with hope, with observation. One night after he left, I picked up my pen and wrote, "You can still be a good father, even if you weren't a good partner. Just don't confuse the two." Isla turned 3 months old that week. She smiled for the first time, like really smiled with her whole face. And when she did, I didn't think of Julian. I didn't think of Aria. I didn't even think of the past. I thought of everything that came after. The rocking chair. The quiet writing hours. The stillness I earned. The girl in the mirror I fought to meet again. This wasn't the life I imagined, but maybe it was the one I was always meant to build, brick by brick, word by word. The cake was smaller this time. No 3-tier fondant. No crystal toppers. Just lemon and lavender, soft, honest, and made by Sierra's aunt from scratch. The apartment was warm, not crowded, not echoing with forced laughter. Just a few close friends, Isla asleep in a woven bassinet by the fireplace, and music low enough that you could still hear every laugh without shouting over it. Delaney handed me a glass of sparkling cider. "You know, she said last year you were crying into tiramisu. This year I said smiling. I'm finally the one who made the guest list." She clinked her glass against mine. "Damn right you did. Julian wasn't there. Not because he wasn't invited, but because he asked, and respected the answer when I said, 'This night isn't for healing. It's for peace.' He dropped off a gift earlier in the day. A wrapped book, The Year of Magical Thinking, by Joan Didion. Inside the cover, a note. 'Thank you for building something beautiful out of what I broke.' I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger, or pity, or confusion. Just closure. Real closure. Naomi lit the candle. Just one. Because this wasn't about numbers anymore. It was about moments. Moments that looked nothing like last year's. No glitter. No microphone speeches. No silver boxes with cruel surprises inside. Just this. A baby girl in footed pajamas dreaming next to the fire. A group of women who showed up and stayed. Not out of obligation, but out of love. And a mother. Tired, scarred, stronger. Then she looks ready to make a wish. Everyone went quiet as I leaned in. One breath. One wish. I didn't say it out loud, but in my heart I whispered, "Let this be the year she grows up seeing what love really looks like." The flame flickered, then disappeared, and just like that the past didn't vanish, but it loosened. After cake, Sierra asked, "Do you ever think about what you'd say to him now? If you could go back to that night?" I looked at the sleeping baby, then at the flickering candle wax, then back at her. Nothing, I said softly, because he doesn't need to hear it anymore. I do. Later, when the guests had gone, and the apartment was quiet again, I curled into the couch with Isla on my chest. She stirred. Her eyes opened for just a second. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "We made it, little one." The first letter took me 3 weeks to write. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew it mattered too much to rush. It sat half-finished on my desk, folded over itself like a secret. Until one night after Isla fell asleep on my chest, I picked up the pen and wrote until the sky turned from blue to ash. Dear Isla, you're too small to read this now, but someday, maybe on your 18th birthday, or when you're holding your own child, I hope this finds you. I hope you hold these words the way I held you that first night, with trembling hands full of love and fear and wonder. You changed everything, not just because you were born, but because you gave me permission to be reborn too. I sealed the envelope with a wax stamp and dated it to be opened June 8th, 2043, and I placed it in a small cedar box I had built just for her. Inside were things she didn't know she'd treasure yet: the hospital bracelet with her tiny name, a printed photo of us on our first morning home, the blog post that went viral when I wrote about surviving betrayal, and now, this letter. Each year I would write one more, not to teach her, not to warn her, but to walk beside her in all the years I wouldn't get to hold her hand, to say, you were loved in all the quiet ways. You were protected even when I was afraid. You were never the reason for the pain. You were the reason I rose from it. Julian never became the villain of the story. He stayed in Isla's life gently, respectfully. He sent books. He attended parent nights. He asked before showing up, but he also never tried to rewrite the past. And that, in the end, was enough. One night, when Isla was almost 1, I found her in the living room, tiny fingers buried in the cedar box, pulling out the letter with her name on it. She didn't understand it yet. She just held it to her chest like she knew it belonged to her, and I smiled, because the story I once thought had ended in that silver box had only just begun, because healing doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives in soft moments, tiny hands, midnight journaling, and in a letter written to a future where you've finally forgiven yourself.